All right, let's check on this daily puzzle, tournament style, which means we're going to look at this guy and make our moves in the brain, before we make a move on the board, because we're going to make our moves satisfied that it's winning. So, normally we look at checks, captures, piece contacts, and board situation. But man, board situation, you have this juicy, and I mean juicy, discovered attack from this knight and this bishop. So you have stuff like knight f3 double check, knight e2 double check. You have knight takes b3 check, knight to c2 check. So we have literally like 4 good discovered checks. Now, also in this board position, you have to look and see that he's got 2 rooks for our knight. So going rook hunting with knight to c2 or b3 check is not really that profitable, because you end up being an exchange down, after you've expended your discovered check. The other problem is, if you expend your discovered check and it's not a double check, he can just play d4 and block your bishop, and you can't take jack. So really, you'll see that knight b3 or knight to c2 check, he just plays d4, and you don't even get a chance to take the rook. You can't go, I'll just play bishop takes pawn. We'll just go rook takes bishop. He's got queen and rook, 2 defenders on d4. You have 2 attackers, you will lose. So, summarily, we get rid of knight b3 and knight c2 check. The only checks of value are either e2 or f3. Now, this is just from taking a look at the moves mentally and realizing that there's a follow-up to whatever you do. Now, double check, the beauty of that, as you know, is that he's got to move his king. There's no fancy business. There's no d4 to worry about. So essentially, if we go and double check him on e2 or f3, what it boils down to is that it becomes the question of, can we checkmate this guy or probably win his queen? Anything less than that is going to be a failure. We can just play queen takes rook if we want him to take a rook, all right? But if we did that, he'd play bishop to e3 and stop our double check. So this is how you look at the checks. That's the first thing in my list, and this is what we're doing, is these discovered checks are the only checks we have, and it's super powerful. But, we look at the captures where queen takes rook is done, because he's going to play bishop e3 and there's no more check. So clearly the logic is telling us it's knight e2 or knight f3 double check. So now on the surface, knight f3 double check blocks our queen. So we're blocking our queen's access. So just on that alone, I'm not even going to look at knight f3 check unless this knight e2 check fails. So let's look at knight e2 check. We're going to trim the tree. We trimmed it from these 2 because b3 and c2 lose to d4. Knight f3 blocks our queen. I don't like it. So the most promising of these 4 check moves, these don't count. f5, e6, and b5, those 3 moves don't count because they're not doing anything. d4 will be the answer. So double check on e2, to me, has to be the move, because your queen now is, in position as well to make some business. So the queen guards h1 and g2, as you can see, in f3. The bishop guards g1 and f2, delivering check. So if we go knight e2 check, king f1 is the forced only move he's got. And my rule is that if he's got only one move, that's probably winning. Okay, so now you'd go, what is the follow-up? Well, the only real check you have of any value at that point, I guess technically you have 2. You have queen h1 check and queen to f3 check, because the knight is on e2. The problem is, if we allow him to get to e1, he's going to e1, d2, and c3. He's going to sneak away. So this is something I use as what I refer to as the brute force method. brute force method will show you the path of where the king will go. So I'm going to show you brute force method. It's knight e2 check, king f1, queen f3 check, looking like it's protecting the knight and being very strong, king e1, and then you could play bishop f2 check, king d2, and then he's going to go king c2, and he's going to sneak out like an air bubble. So knight e2 check looks to be correct. King f1 is forced. I think queen h1 is the right move. It cuts off e1, forces him actually. He has technically two moves. He can take the knight, or he can go king to d2. Now, that's interesting. Well, that's a good question. I just assumed he'd take the knight. What if he doesn't take the knight? Oh, no, he has to take the knight. King f1, queen h1 check. He has one move, that's king takes knight. Yeah, that's forced. Okay, I was like, what if he doesn't take it? Well, I was imagining something else. He was already on e1 going to d2. I'm like, no. Yes, king from the beginning, knight e2 check. King f1 forced, queen h1 check. King takes knight is forced. Now, these black squares the dark squares are guarded by the bishop. We have queen to g2 check. Problem he has, he's here, he has one move, king to here. And after we play that move, queen to f2 is checkmate. So run this again. Now we have found what we believe to be the correct winning line. Let's run it through one more time and confirm it. Knight e2 check. King f1 is forced. Queen, queen, bishop. You can't go to those squares. You only can go to here. Queen to h1 check. Queen, 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 bishop, bishop, So queen guards e1. So he can only go king takes knight, which is on e2. We hit him with queen to g2 check. Covers the second rank. The bishop guards the dark squares. He only has one square. The queen guards this square because the queen's on g2. The king is on e2. He can only go to none of these. Bishop, queen, 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 queen. King can only go here. Queen to f2 is checkmate. That's game over. We win. In the bank, baby. And that is how you do it. This showed us how you can see, using my system, we identify the key moves relatively quickly. That was a relatively easy problem to identify the move. The knight discovered check was an easy move to identify, but there was a lot of moves we had to look at, and so we trimmed the tree down, pruned that tree, because this was terrible, this was terrible. The other moves that don't do anything are also terrible. So we can't go here. So the knight has 8 moves. Can't go here, makes it 7. Got rid of this, 6. Got rid of this, 5. Got rid of this, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. These two were terrible because we said, well, as you get better, you're going to have a better ability to spot the defensive moves. Knight takes b3 check, d4, crushes. So those two became trash as soon as you find d4. Now, granted, you're going to have that skill to find the great defensive move or the proper one. So that's part of the thing that these problems will help you do, is to learn this technique to find moves. And also, you're going to have to work on your game to be able to find moves like d4. So we trimmed it down from 8 possible knight moves to 2. And like I said, realistically, it doesn't take much. If you look at knight f3 check, you're blocking your queen. As you saw, we need queen access to checkmate this guy. The knight's not enough, and not with the bishop. So we trimmed it down pretty quickly to knight e2 check, That was a forced move. As you can see, the bishop and queen just own these two diagonals, like double bishops. And then the sacrifice of the knight is not obvious. So if you didn't see that, that's not a problem. But what happens is this becomes a kind of a decoy where it takes his king to a really bad square because our queen is point blank. So he eats it. We check him again. The queen and bishop are working in magnificent concert. He has only one move. Remember my rule. When the king has one escape square, you're probably winning. And we were. The rest is gravy, as they say. So, not really super easy, but very understandable. And any of the things you didn't quite grasp instantly is something that's telling you that's an area of your game that needs improvement. So it's not about getting the problem right. It's about, if you didn't get some of the moves or didn't see some of the moves that I saw in the sequence that I did it, that's telling you, hey, you're not as good at this part of the game as you would like to be, obviously. So this is really helpful because it's showing you things that you don't know, and you can't learn something until you know that you don't know it. And that is the key. That's what makes these problems so useful, is that they can give you an outside guidance to show you things you don't know, and you go, oh, I need to work on this, and I work on my visualization. That's one of the things I talk about a lot, is you got to visualize these moves that I was visualizing as I'm telling you the moves. Being able to visualize that D4 move was really important. Visualizing the fact that sacrificing the knight was killer is also a key move. Those are really the two most key moves. D4 never gets played because we don't allow him to play a great move. We can, and we could. So we visualized an awesome defensive move that he never played because we just did not allow him to do it. And then we also visualized the queen check that forces him to eat the knight, which he doesn't want to go to that square. So this is the kind of stuff that will help you improve your game, even though you go, wow, that was a really short problem. We made what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 moves. So for a 7-piece movement solution, it looks deceptively simple, but you've seen the sequence that's not deceptively simple. There's a lot of skill in here. So any of you who got all those moves, that's fantastic. Those of you that didn't, if you missed whatever, this is helping you because now you know an area of your game to work on. So you guys know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. I will talk to you guys later.